What does the future of the Republican Party look like? It depends a lot on who you're asking in the Never Trump movement. Some are considering a new home in the Democratic Party, so not the Republican Party at all, while others are holding out hope for a return to the old GOP, or at least something like it. Joining us, former Republican governor of North Carolina, Pat McCrory, and founder of Leaving MAGA and former Florida co-chair of Republicans for Harris, Rich Logis. He's also the author of the new book, One Betrayal Too Many, Why I Left MAGA. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I feel like the two of you were on two sides of the same issue here. Governor McCrory, I'll start with you. There was this Principles First summit where there was a big argument about where the party goes, or does the party exist after Donald Trump? And you were of the opinion, unlike some others, that leaving the Republicans for the Democrats, you're just not quite ready for that. Tell me why.
Well, because I'm a conservative. I'm a conservative on many issues. I kind of call myself a Reagan conservative who believes in fiscal responsibility, who believes in limited government, who believes more control at the city and state level, having been a former mayor for 14 years. And the Democratic Party does not represent that. They're far too liberal for me. And also, I don't want to give up on my party, even though I think the party is just flip-flop on about every issue. In fact, both parties have flip-flopped. You look at trade tariffs. It was the Democrats that used to be for tariffs and the Republicans who are against tariffs. Just 5 years ago, the Club for Growth was giving millions of dollars to the Freedom Caucus to get them elected. And the Freedom Caucus was against all tariffs. And now all of a sudden, the Republican Party is the pro-tariff party and the Democratic Party is the anti-tariff party. And you can go down on issue after issues, even on the recent voting controversy. Who has say in how do we determine elections? It used to be the Democrats said the federal government needs to step in. The Republicans say let's leave it at the state and local level. They have completely flip-flopped without admitting it, by the way. So I don't even know what the definition of MAGA is, or Rhino, or the Democratic and Republican Party anymore. I don't think there is any clear definition of even the term conservative or Republican, or conservative or Democrat or progressive anymore, because they're flip-flopping on issues based upon one word, and that is power, because that's what they're interested in.
Oh, yeah, or whether you can bring a gun to a protest, by the way. That's another weird flip-flop we've seen. The issue, I think, is Donald Trump.
That's an excellent example.
Yeah.
That's an excellent example.
The issue is Donald Trump. There's Donald Trump and whatever he says on any given day and what he wants, what he believes, the loyalty he demands. And then there's everybody else who doesn't want to be in support of Donald Trump, so they define themselves against what he supports. Rich, let's talk about your opinion on this, because your position, I believe, is a little bit different than the governor's regarding where the party should go and whether the never-Trumpers like you remain or do something else. What's your argument?
Oh, Katie, it's good to be with you. Thank you for having me. And I would just like to first, for those meeting me, apologize for my past MAGA activism. When I was in the MAGA community, it was a fantasy of ours to kill off the GOP and transform it into a MAGA party. And I think that that has been accomplished and achieved. And I give credit to the Never Trump movement because they saw Donald Trump for who he really was. In my memoir, I go into some of the reasons that I was attracted to the Trump campaign and also some of the reasons why I decided to leave MAGA. And while I don't think I'm quite qualified to give political analysis, something that I would say, and perhaps it's something the governor could relate to, is I think that Republicans and conservatives perhaps have not had their reckoning as to why Donald Trump and MAGA were able to, in such a dominant fashion, seize control of the Republican Party. So as I see our two major parties right now, there is the Democratic Party and then there is the MAGA Party. And as someone who was a Republican in Trump's first administration, I left the party in 2021. I believe that the pre-Trump Republican Party is over, and whether someone who's a Republican should stay in the party or not, that's very much an individual choice. But for me, it was it was an easy choice to go from Republican to independent, which is how I remain to this day.
Yeah, so that is a good question. Is the pre-Trump Republican Party gone, never to be revived, Governor?
No, I think we've had these streaks of populism, never to this example over personality, but this is a populist movement. And maybe there's a reason for the populist movement because the left went too far left in some of its rhetoric, and there was pushback against it. But, you know, when I was on the campaign trail as governor with President-elect Trump or the candidate Trump, I never wore a MAGA hat because I never know what it meant. I don't. Listen, when I was governor and mayor, I never let anybody use slogans around me because I think slogans don't say anything. And we still use the term MAGA without understanding what it is, just like I was suddenly called a rhino. And I still don't know what a rhino is, but it's the term's flung out there so easily. And this name calling and immaturity on both sides of the aisle has just got to end. We've got to get back to statesman-like behavior. And I'm scared to death of tomorrow night, Tuesday night, on both what's going to be said at the podium and what the reaction is going to be, because it's everything that goes against my instincts of why I got into public service, first as a city council member who had to deal with snowstorms as a mayor. And we need to get to people who can work together during crisis, whether it be a riot or a snowstorm or a foreign policy issue, which we're having right now.
Yeah, getting into politics to fix things and to make people's lives better, not just to fight and call the other side names. Rich, one of the arguments.
That's why I was with No Labels. You know, I stayed with the Republican Party, but became co-chair with No Labels with Joe Lieberman and Dr. Ben Chavis, looking for another choice besides the two choices we had. And yet I kept my Republican Party status, but I just think we can do better. And right now, the elections are rigged in a way, not the way the Trump people say it is, but the way the two parties make the rules for how do you become a candidate, the gerrymandering, and things of this nature. And that is a foundational issue that I think there's a lot of agreement out there about it needing to be addressed. The problem is the people who can address it are the ones that have already benefited from the broken system, so they don't have a lot of incentive to do so, but that's for another time. Rich, one of the forward-looking questions for the Never Trump movement is, do you support a Democrat in 2028 or do you support a Republican? Is a Marco Rubio as a candidate somebody that you could support? Is a J.D. Vance somebody that you could support? Or is their relationship to MAGA, their position in this world, is that too much? Is it a bridge too far?
Well, I'll try to define, perhaps it might help the governor, how to define MAGA, which is I believe it transcends politics and ideology, and I believe that MAGA can best be understood as a community. It's where people have found a sense of belonging, a feeling of gathering, camaraderie. There's a shared purpose. And I believe that there are more and more people in the MAGA community, Katie, who are starting to have doubts, are starting to question their belief system. We have lots of stories of those who have left MAGA at our website at leavingmaga.org. We also feature stories in our memoir. And the reason for the devotion to Donald Trump is because he is the titular leader of that community. And I believe when he is off the political scene, MAGA will not go away, but it will weaken. And the good news is that if it in fact does begin to unravel, then there will be millions of Americans who will be at a crossroads, and we need to make the case to them that we don't want them to become subsumed into whatever the next iteration is of MAGA and right-wing politics. So I think right now there are more people than we realize who have quietly left MAGA, who are quietly having doubts. And what we're trying to do at our organization is we're trying to create a new community for them. And I believe that we are building something special. We have never been busier as an organization. We've never been more active. And those in MAGA who are thinking about leaving, they need an exit ramp and they need a new destination. And that's what we're trying to provide for them.
All right, Rich Loges, Pat McCrory, Governor, thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here and to be continued on this conversation for sure.